Leigh, welcome to the podcast. Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you for coming on. How did you get into the fenestration world?
Well, my dad had a company, Walker's Windows it was, back in the day. He must have started before I was born. But he was making timber windows before I was born. I remember going down to his factory at lunchtime from school, and then we used to do a bit of work welding, screwing little bits of steel in the end of transoms with an automatic screw in the school holidays to make some pocket money for a nice Casio watch from Argos back in the day. That was the thing to have with a little calculator on it.
Nice.
Where you'd work the whole school holidays and then you'd hopefully come out with that, something like that at the end. And so that's where we started off. My dad had that company, and then I found it all quite boring, to be honest, the Windows side of things. So when I left school, I went into mechanical engineering apprenticeship, and I ended up working at chocolate mould engineering. But eventually I got into the drawing office in there, at which point I saw that there was 3D, and that was a thing. Until then, I didn't know these things existed in CAD, Eventually, I switched over to civil engineering, where I could continue my education at university 1 day a week at Leeds Met. And I used to work for a company in Huddersfield, but they wanted to shut it down. And at the same time, Dubai was kicking off. It was, a big boom there at that time. So I went over there. They sent me over there. So I was working on the Dubai Mall,
Right.
using AutoCAD. So we were designing how to hold concrete up in the air, basically. And now, sitting there every day thinking, I don't understand why can't a computer do this itself. We're so repetitive what we're doing, really. So I got them to send me on a course programming AutoCAD, and that's where it all started, programming, really, which is where WindowCAD comes in. So eventually, for various reasons, I left that job, and so I didn't have any work. And at that time, my dad was starting to do composite windows, timber on the inside, aluminium outside. So there were no software available at that time because it's slightly different cuts for two different profiles together. Started making something in AutoCAD for him at the beginning, but then it needed to be outside AutoCAD. They didn't want to have AutoCAD, obviously, in the window company. So I learned how to get the program out of AutoCAD by itself, installed by itself on the computer, and so that was like the first version of WindowCAD there. It could do like his cutting list for him, optimizing what balance and whatever required to order. So it was quite useful to them back in the day, and that's where it started. And at the same time, it just happened to be that that's when composite doors were coming out as well, so it worked out quite well. So I only had one customer really, but then they sort of, it was Evergreen at the time at Birstall, who've gone to distinction now, but they were importing doors and they were interested in a good designer. So I knocked up the first sort of door designer in HTML for them, but then they got bought out and that didn't happen. But I managed to get one of their big customers, and that was like my first customer ever, and official customer. And I've just been through quite a few versions of WindowCAD since then. It's on version 7 now, so gradually improving, and gradually add more and more features until I get to a stage where it's just such a messy system because you've tried to bolt all this stuff on, you have to start again, and that's when I start a fresh version. And it is WindowCAD 7 at the moment in 3D.
That kind of makes sense. A few questions. I've got a few questions. So, firstly, one, I was in exactly the same boat with you. It wasn't a watch. I was trying to buy a bike, and I worked for my dad in the factory. I was welding frames and things and cutting up reinforcing. So that was something that was made me smile. So you didn't go into the family business, but you could see the problems. And then, so did you design it originally? Was it to be? It wasn't a designer as such to begin with. It was to be the cutting lists and a sort of a manufacturing piece of software rather than the design of it.
Yeah, they didn't really. All they needed to put in the sizes and pick a frame style. Basically, yeah, it was the cutting list what was the main focus for them. Otherwise, they would have to go through. That's what they were doing. That's the big time saver was having to manually go through all these frames, trying to calculate all the deductions on each end and the transom lengths and all that. And it's, if you can chop a 50mm off the program, then you can end up saving a full length of bar buying it, because they've got to get it all sprayed and whatever from Smarts. And so it was quite a critical bit of software for them, really.
No, that makes sense. So it's sort of, and then it evolved then, whereas design is now, I mean, this day and age, design is all everyone really thinks about, especially the consumer. So this is where it sort of came in. But it's quite interesting to see that wasn't the original, you've pivoted and gone with the times rather than just saying this is what we've created. And that kind of makes sense, because I remember finding your software and looking at it from the designer point of view as an option, and I was intrigued. I thought, oh, this thing can cut as well. What software is this? How did it come about? So that kind of makes sense. So then the next thing is WindowCAD name. Where did that come from?
Well, it's just because when I was working and programming in AutoCAD, computer aided design, it means CAD. So it just seemed logical. It's window computer aided design, so it seemed like a logical name, and it's stuck ever since, and people recognise it today.
So yeah, so you started with, it was doors then that spurred on the design bit, because ultimately, I have to admit, most customers do want to design a door more than a window. So that's where you started from, and then it just evolved into windows.
Yeah, so that's when I sort of realised that it really starts at the homeowner, doesn't it, where they want to design. That's the first stage. So you need to build a design that can be put on the website and target the homeowner, so they can submit an inquiry, really. And hopefully, which is what it ended up doing, is the customer, the company can then continue with their design rather than rejoin it from scratch. So I was trying to create an easy to use design interface, but at the same time save the company time from repetitive work. And then so the sales guy will then pass it on to the surveyor, and in some companies they use it for manufacturing as well. So
what did early days of WindowCAD look like? Was it you and trying to get more customers? What did that look like?
It was more, I've never ever really gone chasing customers. It's it was a sort of juggle between making a website that tried to attract people to come and buy it online and make the program at the same time. It was just me. And at the beginning, it was a struggle, and I didn't have enough customers really at the beginning. When I was in Dubai, see, the company was paying for me to live there, basically my rent and that and car, and I was saving quite a bit of money. But I decided to come back and start making that program, and I was expecting it to go a lot faster.
Like most people do in business.
So I was sat at home using all this cash up, and it was getting lower and lower, and I still didn't really have any customers at that time, but I did have a few, and that gives you a bit of hope. So as you get a few more, and just as my funds was running out, I was just getting enough customers to balance, and it was a close call, but I survived.
But so at the time, so when did you start? What year was it, WindowCAD?
uh, was it 2011?
2011.
Mm,
So there were other. So from your point of view, I'm just trying to picture it because you've probably got. So you're looking at other software out there that can manufacture, but you were coming in and you had the design arm and you sort of had it the other way as well. So you were ready to design, whereas they necessarily weren't. They were ready to manufacture, not the other way around. And you were doing both. So it was kind of a new concept, wasn't it,
yeah,
to a lot of people? So, which is anyone that started that kind of thing or tried to do something new in an industry that doesn't move very quickly knows that that's quite difficult to do. And the fact that you did it without a salesperson or anything that effectively do, it's just again, that's impressive. But eventually, people did start to take it on and adapt and go with the flow.
yeah.
Yeah, they saw it.
Yeah, I mean, it gradually sort of picked up, and I think what helped is I put my website on the bottom of the quotes and at the beginning. So when sales guys were going and selling jobs with this, and they would sell it, the customer would then show, well, we've had a quote from these guys, and look at the quality of that compared to your hand-drawn quote, and they look at the bottom of Windows software, oh, we'll have a look at that, and then I think that got me quite a few. It probably still does. Gets me a few customers by just trying to keep up with the competition. So, but that I think helped at the beginning.
And so now you mentioned features over time. What are the kind of things you've had to add to sort of keep up with the time, shall we say?
Um, well, the biggest change was this version, and unfortunately and annoyingly for a lot of customers, I had to sack off all their settings, which they've been spending years doing. And sorry, everybody, but to move from 2D to 3D was, I tried to make it so it could convert, but it just wasn't possible. There's so many variations in trying to add an extra dimension to profiles and stuff like that. It ended up being impossible to um, convert the settings to that new version. So the biggest change was that moving to 3D. But the reason why we had to do that was because it's more or less impossible to make a shaped frame in that looks good in 2D. I'm sure the companies have tried to experience that. You're trying to do a gradient and stuff that goes around a shape. It's more or less impossible. So the idea behind 3D was that the 3D environment will create all lighting and shadows. You don't have to worry about that. You just have to worry about creating the 3D profile and let the 3D engine control the lighting, which is the easy. Well, once you've got a profile there, it's the easy part to do the lighting in 3D. But that was why we had to move to 3D, which is the version 7, the current version.
Did you do that because you feel like it's needed? It's got to be out there. That's the natural progression because it's a lot of work. You could have
Yeah.
easily just stayed on 2D, or were you just trying to?
Yeah, I mean, there's not even that many shaped frames really, is there, compared to normal frames? But you just want to try and make everybody happy. It's a question that kept popping up. Can you do the shaped frames? No, I can't. But you want to be able to say, yes, it can. You can do this and everything. So you're just constantly trying to make customers happy and make the program more useful. And it's quite rewarding when you get people sitting there designing exactly what they want and showing the customer exactly what they want, and they enjoy actually enjoy designing windows for them, in 3D. So, and it's right rewarding for me knowing that I created that for them. So that's the benefit for me.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. So I think with most businesses, you are led by your customers. It's what they want versus what you can actually do.
Yeah,
So yeah, it sounds like you've got a good balance there.
yeah. Well, we try. Yeah, well, I mean, I do get a lot of customers where you just have to say there's a lot better features to add than that. I'm sorry, but a lot of requests that, for example, if you're trying to add a massive new feature in the badge and you're about adding a new style of glazing bar or something, but it's like that is nothing compared to what I'm working on at the moment. So you have to unfortunately say no quite a lot of the time, but there's plenty of good suggestions there. We have like a forum on a group on Facebook where a lot of suggestions get put on there, and we do we do action on quite a few of those, and they've been good ideas. They moved it forward.
Yeah, it's a bit of a two-way street, isn't it? So you got to keep the balance,
Yeah.
and you can't say yes to everything. Otherwise, like you say, it just wouldn't. Your time would be used up adding. I can only imagine what some of the requests are. But I suppose you're getting onto almost bespoke software there. So is that something that you offer?
No, we try to just keep one version of the program there, because that's enough work to try and maintain that. So we don't want to split it off into different copies and trying to maintain more than one version. So any changes that we make have to sort of be beneficial to the majority of people.
So again, with how the company looks now, then. So originally, back in the day when you started, it was you. Has the team grown now?
Well, we actually freelance quite a lot of stuff out, but mainly on the interface side. So, because that's kind of separate from the code, if you like, designing the interface, and it's a constant battle when you've got a growingly complicated program to trying to juggle that with an interface that is easy to use, and especially the settings that keep growing, more control, more features, and trying to make an interface that makes it controllable but easy is a constant task, and you have to have guys constantly looking at new ways to make a better UI thing, a user interface for it, and that's a job in itself. So we've got people working on that, and I try and stick to the actual code behind what makes the 3D visuals at the end of the day.
Going back to sort of when you came up with the idea of WindowCAD, and sort of, did you see yourself earning a living from it, and it being a business, or was it kind of, I'm going to see what happens here, or did you have that vision? Did you picture it would be where it is today?
No, I didn't think it'd get to this size, but I just wanted uh, a, an average salary out of it, really, and I thought I'd get there, uh, and I did. Hope, thank goodness.
But ultimately, though, because you were in a position where you could have gone and got another job after Dubai, it was the skills that you built up and that you've been, using and learning weren't going to waste. You could have jumped into another market and you could have not been in the industry. So it sounds as if Fenestration did grab you back in the early days. And did your dad always use your software as well? That's the other question.
Yeah, I mean they're still using it now.
Oh, there
Walkers,
you go.
windows. Yeah. Uh,
Do you give them a discount because they were the guinea pigs?
no, no discount for anyone. Business.
But at the same time, that I'm sure that helped because you were able to test it in real time and say this works, and you were linking it to a business that you could actually have access to, and they could be honest with you and say, get that feedback. So it must have made a massive difference.
Yeah, it definitely helped in the beginning. I could go in there into the factory and talk to the guy who was putting all these jobs through, and it was a good help to start it off because you need to build up your knowledge of the actual industry at the same time as well, and that's where I learned a lot of stuff from them guys, Walker's Windows. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of makes sense now because I'm sure I looked you up years ago when I found WindowCAD because I was on the trial and I thought, who is this guy? Where's he come from? What's his story? And now we've got it. So there you go. Because I was, yeah, I'm sure I did. Because I thought this is good. You know, you're onto something here. And this is because I was in sales at the time, so I was using it from a point of view of, yeah, I think it was about 2014, so a few years after it had been. But I hadn't seen it advertised, and I was on. You know, I've been in the company before that as well, so it had been around. I'd sort of known about it. Um, so yeah, yeah, really interested.
When we don't really market it or anything, it's. I've always liked those customers who are looking outside the box, you know, and they're looking to put some effort into setting it up and that, rather than forcing people to take it. So those people who are searching online for it and come to the website and sign up out off their own back is a nice kind of customer for me. We don't spend any money on marketing or anything. We don't have any sales reps or anything like that, or we don't spend any money on Google. It's more or less all word of mouth, and people just come to the website and sign up. So in the end, it's worked out all right.
I suppose also then you were on the subscription model early days, weren't you? Like
Yeah,
before, because most people were selling software at that time.
yeah. It's always been subscription right from the beginning. I don't know where they got that from, but yeah, I don't know.
Head of the curve.
I mean, it was like 11, 12, 14, was it, years ago or something? 13 years ago, yeah. So, yeah, there wouldn't have been many subscriptions in them days.
No, and like for businesses as well. A subscription that's, you know, I think a lot of them are tied into contracts and things these days with whoever they deal with, and it's quite a daunting thing. But if you can see a monthly rolling, most people are okay with that. They go cancel any time, so
Yeah.
you know, and do it that way. So yeah, well, it's working with software like this. Was there any times where you sort of, you know, did you have to push, or once people saw it, that was usually enough to get them on board?
Yeah, it was usually if you've done a demo, they're sold.
Right.
So nowadays I don't bother doing all that sort of stuff myself if I can help it. I siphon it off to people like Nick at Adverto Media,
Right. Yeah, no, Nick. Yeah.
who was a good guy at doing demos and stuff like that. So we sort of help each other out because he's good at setting up, so he can deal with my customers sales wise, and he gets quite a few setups out of it. So we scratch each other's back, if you like, but it works out quite well.
He's done that for a long time as well, because that's how I met Nick. He actually messaged me when I started Glazing Insider and tried to make. I was making video, well, I was still making videos, but we were making some review videos, and he messaged me. I'll never forget. He said, "Can you do a review video or a comparison video on WindowCAD?" And I thought, who is this guy? And what association? Because I couldn't see the connection, and it made sense. So I met him for a coffee, and we've been friends ever since. So it was that kind of, but the passion was there. You could see how passionate he was about
Yeah, because
software and
he used to work for Caddy Windows back in the day, and he was one of my first customers actually a long time ago, really.
Right, that's
So
where it came from.
he's always loved it since the first versions. So he's always had a good passion for it.
He does, yeah.
Which helps.
And add the sales and marketing,
Yeah.
Nick's away. Well, that's quite a journey. So in all of that journey, is there a low point that sticks out for you?
It was just that time when I was running out of money, really, in the early days when there just wasn't enough customers to make it pay, and it was worrying whether I was going to actually have to, after all that, get a normal job and sack it off, which would be a massive waste of money and time of what I've been sat there trying to get it to go. And it would have been quite depressing having to leave that and go and work for somebody else, but it did come up into my mind quite a lot. But I just stuck at it and slowly got a few more customers, and and I made it, thank goodness.
It's a difficult thing. I think a lot of business owners go through it. You know, sometimes weekly, monthly, yearly. You know, it's that hard to think. But I think, yeah, it's. I don't know why, but some businesses it seems like it's easier for them if it's the concept that people have heard of before and things like that. So when you're bringing in something new, it can be a little bit harder, and you do have to plead with your accountant a little bit more. Just say, "Hang in there, I can see it coming." So yeah, I think a lot of people will resonate with that. I think that's a lot of people go through that from a business point of view, and I think no one's really scared about getting a job, but it's always something that it's the amount of times most business owners go, I would love a job right now. Just give me a wage and I'll be happy. So it just balances out. I think it's an equal, balance of people that want a job and people that want a business. But you saw something and you stuck with it, which is the main thing. The other side, the flip side to that is there a high point that sticks out for you?
Well, I think it's when we released version 7 eventually, which was the moving to 3D, and the response from the current customers of when they saw that, they would have, even though they were been using it for years, they were blown away by the new visuals in 3D and being able to zoom into a window handle and see the reflection in it, and look at a bifolding door and see how the whole thing animates in 3D and be able to spin that around. And it's nice to be able to see reaction of people when they are wowed at it, and that's the people who are selling it. So the reaction of the actual customers in the homes must be a lot better. And when you know it's selling jobs, it's quite satisfying and rewarding, and keeps you going, making more features and making it better.
Brilliant. Last question, sometimes the hardest question. If you had to spend 2 weeks on a desert island with someone from the fenestration industry, who would it be?
Darren Chesney at Rockdoor. We worked side by side for many years, getting all their doors together, and we both have got an eye for detail and perfectionists. So working together, we discuss things together, and we both want to get the best looking. That was for them, the rock door, to get as the best it could possibly be. And having someone who's actually a customer like that is quite nice, and it makes your job quite enjoyable sometimes.
I don't know if you're allowed to enjoy your work. I don't think that's allowed, but no. Brilliant. Thank you, Leigh.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. And open invitation. We can wait until version 8 and you can come back. So open invitation anytime.
Yeah, well, we have started on version 8 just last week.
Oh, there you go.
We've found that there's new ways of doing things in the industry of software, and particularly on the door designers and retail designers that we have for the website. It's as the program's going and they're getting slower, and there's new ways out there where you can just download the small chunk of code that you would need for that particular at that particular point. So for example, you go into a door designer and you're designing, you start with your door style, so all you need to download is the actual information to pick a door style at the beginning. So that will be a big leap forwards for the retail stuff on websites, because people won't have to wait at all for their program to load, which will hopefully maintain a lot more customer interaction and get more leads.
Oh, brilliant. Wow. Watch this space. More to come. Thank you, Leigh.
Thank you.